Go. Okay, I just want to talk about today is setting up the site plan and all the the pathways and you know the carriageways for the road, the carriageway for the bicycle, and the footpaths as well as the parking spaces. And just how to do that. I mean, first of all, you don't necessarily need to do it in 3 dimensions. You can just use detail lines to draw a site plan, depending on what you want to use it for. But I'm going to do it with the detail lines first of all, and then I'm going to use the detail lines to set up a 3D version of it, just to give you a sense of. I mean, we don't have so many slopes on this site, but if you had a slope site, it can get quite complex as to how to make decent roads and so on. And since Revit doesn't have a specific tool for making roads, we need to use the floor tool effectively to make roads. So I'm just going to go into let's go into the where are we here section. I'll just turn on the color here so we can see what's happening. So here we have the file we inserted last week. It's just the walls file linked in and copied, and we have it inserted actually at level at its own level 0, which is the equivalent of level 2.3 in the level 2.3 in the actual site file. Okay. Again, we don't need to necessarily have all these grid lines and everything from the linked file showing up in the overall file. So I can go and switch them off over here. So I go to Visibility and Graphics over here. Revit links. So I'm actually modifying the representation of the links separate from the rest of the project. So I select Host View, and then I select Custom and Annotation, and then once again Custom. So then I can switch off all the annotations by just unchecking this tick box, Apply, and OK. And so now we've kind of cleaned up the drawing, and all we have in here is the site, annotations, and the individual linked models, okay, which are still there in the overall site, like that. Okay, so let's go back in here. So then we can see that the ground level we inserted is shown as level 2.3. So we just need to decide at what level we want to have the pathway into the project. And since we probably need to have some kind of a flush threshold, we can show it at least at this stage at ground level. So do it at the same level here. Now what I'm going to do is on this sheet here, we have set up the individual requirements for the roads that are happening in the site itself. So we have all these different options in here, and I can go in here and find that. In between the houses, it's section BB, which is the one that we need to think about. So if I roll up here to section BB, this is how they're proposing that the roads be laid out. So we've got a pathway of 2.5 meters. We've got a parking area with trees, 5.35, and we've got a driving area at 5.5, and then the same thing on the other side. So that means that you can drive in here, you can park your car, you can reverse out again, you can drive away again. Okay, so it's kind of a simple suburban road, or even urban road in this case. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to put that in, and just to show you how to do it. So I go into ground level. Actually, we can go into site. We'll go into site view because we're just going to draw it in 2D to start with. Again, you can see we've got we're a little bit overwhelmed on the grids here. So let's do the same thing again. Visibility and Graphics, Revit links, Host View, Custom, and then we switch off the annotations. And I'm going to change the orientation of the site from True North to Project North, like that, so we can draw in a straight line again. And let's just turn up the scale a little bit so we're not overwhelmed by text. So let's just turn it up to 1:50 for the moment, so the text just kind of disappears into the background for the moment. So now we can see we've got the basic site behind, we've got this sketch idea of the layout of the piers, I suppose they are, that they're proposing in there. So I'm going to start by doing this this element in here, and I think I'll also switch these grids off because they don't really do anything for us. So hide in view category as well. Okay. So let's just turn on hidden line, and then we've got kind of the basis of how we're going to start. So we had housing over here, and then this parking area in the middle. So I'm just going to use the annotate tool to kind of set up the road we want. So I'm going to say annotate, detail line, or again you can use the shortcut DL. And I'm just first of all going to set up a guideline. I'm going to draw it from this face to this face. And that allows me to take a midpoint and draw a line directly down the center of the road here. So then we have a guideline that everything else can be taken off. Let me just WT that and see what we've got going on here. Let's switch that off, switch that off, switch that off, WT. So we want to achieve snit BB. So the easy way to do this is just to use the offset tool. So I'm going to take the line here and go up and take offset. So I'm just going to offset it from the center. So I'm going to take half of 5.5, which is 2750. And then we can just offset it that way. And let's just do it one side at a time. The next one is 400 millimeters. Set it that way. Then we have 5350. And then we have 2500. Sometimes this little text box at the top here can cheat you, as in you think you've typed in 2500 and when you try and do it, it's actually 2.5 or something like that. It's an error that's been in Revit for all the time I've been using it, so you have to keep your eye on this little offset box up here. Anyway, so then we have so now we have this 2.5, so we have the foretoe, which is the pathway. We have the parking area and the planting area. We have this pause point, and we have half the roadway on this side. So once we've done it on one side, we can just select by holding down Control, and then mirror by selecting the center line. Like that. Simple enough, yeah? Okay. So now we need to worry about let's go back to this master plan again. Now we need to worry about this area here, because we need to in some way turn the corner. So that's section C. WT again. So go and find section C. And in section C, it's giving us obviously different instructions. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this in. Now, the sketch of the floor here does not necessarily have the same integrity as the as these sketches over here. So I'm just going to try and make it line up as much as possible. So this time around, I'm going to use the detail line again. So I'm going to draw a detail line just down the face of the building here. And once again, use the offset tool, 2.5, then 2.000, 5,000, and then 2,000. And then it's telling us that it's between 4 meters and 12 meters to the outer face of the pier edge there. So I'm just going to take it for the moment as being 4 meters is the minimum, so I'm just going to offset it by 4 meters. And you can see that down here we're just going to have to make some adjustments as to how this works. So then we have a curbane, how do you pronounce that? Curbane, as in the driving area here. We've got a driving area here. So what is important is the radius of the curve as to how these two meet together. And you can find this stuff in, for example, in Neufert's guide, where it talks about roads and so on, as to standard radii are for these elements. But the thing to remember is it's always based on the local authority's requirements. So it's generally something you need to consider or have a conversation about, with them about as to what the requirements are. And often on a large scale scheme like this, there will be a roads engineer employed and he will deal with all that information. You just need to give them an overall idea of how it works. But what we can do here, just to give a starting point, is we can set a radius between these two roads. So the way to do that is, again, detail line. And one of the detail line options is this fillet arc. And if we use fillet arc, we can just select radius, and then we can change the radius to, let's say, 10 meters. And we can select the interface of this roadway and the interface of this roadway, and it will just curve it around for us. So that kind of gives us the basis for the whole thing, and that's kind of the guidelines as to how you set this stuff up. Once we've done that, we could continue. Let's just do this a little bit. I'm going to continue through and add some detail lines for the car parking spaces. I'm just going to draw a detail line here to the top. Sorry, it should be stopped at this line actually. And again, we just use the offset tool to offset it by 2.4, which is a standard parking space, and then we kind of continue. Now we can choose which of these is parking spaces and which of them is kind of planting for trees. So you could probably make a principle that every 5 parking spaces you put a parking space of the same width, and then you put a tree in it, because it just adds such quality to the urban environment. And so you end up with something like that. Okay, simple enough. So, I mean, you can actually continue to use the detail lines to build up your entire site plan. But once you're finished with that, you can then convert it to 3D elements. So this one's a little bit complex. If I turn on the shaded view here, you can see that behind here. Oops, let me just select the correct thing. Floor. I've just drawn in this quick floor to represent these kind of sketch piers that they've drawn in there. So I would probably modify the floor so at least it follows these minimum requirements here before I started to add any 3D elements to it. But just to show you how you would do that, what we can do is use the guidelines. So it's exactly like making a floor and making a foundation. It's because Revit is about building and construction. You basically need to make an excavation each time, and then you need to fill it up with something. So I can use these sketch lines to fill in the asphalt, for example. Okay. So let's just assume. Let me just extend this one out to here, and extend this one out to here, just to have something to show you. And the first thing I'm going to do is go into the section view and say, well, let's put the a building pad kind of let's say at sea level plus 1,000. Okay. So I'm going to make a building pad. So I'm going to massing in site, building pad. I'm going to give it a height offset of 1,000. And then I can pick these lines I've already made just to make an outline of where we want, for example, the asphalt to go. Trim it around until it works. Let's trim this one to this one. Trim this one to this one. And let's just trim this one to this one as an example. And then pick this line here. So I accept that. And in 3D view, It's not showing up at all. What the hell's going on there? Oh, it's not thick enough. Do you know what I'm doing here? What I've done is I've made a topography. I've actually made two topographies. One is the water, and one is the topography itself. So it's actually taking a bite out of the water, which is not what I wanted to do. So let's just delete the water for the minute, just to and then do the process again. Building pad, select lines, there, 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 and then we'll just select this one, trim it together. Sea level plus 1000, accept it. And then you end up with something like this. So you end up with the equivalent of an excavation in the area that you want. And of course you can modify that and give it the curves that you necessarily need. But what you do then is you create a floor type. So I'm going to make a floor, architectural, edit the type. And I'm going to make it in two layers. The top layer, I'm going to make the finish, which I'm going to turn into asphalt. Let's use this one, just because it's slightly, well, maybe not. It's very grey. Apply it. Okay. And the one below it, this can effectively, we'll just make it gravel or something like that, or sand or gravel. Do we have a gravel material? There we go. But the important thing here is that you make the gravel material actually a variable material. And that means is that you can actually vary the thickness of the material, which allows you to put slopes into the road. So press OK. We need to give this one a thickness first of all. Let's make this one 50 mils. It's OK. And OK. And so now we can again use the same method to select the boundary lines. This one, this one, this one, this one. And make sure we put it on the right level. Copy, align to selected levels, and we put it on sea level, and then 1000. Apply. So it's actually sitting in here. So once you do that, we can actually modify the thickness of the floor itself to bring it up to the correct level we want it to. And it's not so important when you have a flat side, but if you have a curved side, you have this option once you select the floor to modify the sub-elements of the floor itself. And what that means is that it's also a good way of making complex roofs, because the roof tool in Revit, doesn't give you the opportunity to make complex roofs. So I say modify sub-elements. I can do certain things, as in I can add a split line here from here across, and I can then come in here and either select, by modifying the sub-elements, lines, which I can type in 1200 for example, specific levels, or I can select individual points, which I can then, if I can just select it there, modify sub-elements, select the point. It's a little bit hard to catch sometimes, but you can basically control the slopes of the road just by modifying these different sub-elements in here. So let's change this one to let's just change this to 1300, for example. Okay. And this one will change. So if we had an extreme slope in there, obviously we could give it an extreme point situation. So you should have something like that when you're finished, and then afterwards you can come in there and add various elements to it. For example, if we wanted to make, what have we got in here? If we wanted to make a continuous concrete strip along the line here, the way to do it is to make a model in place sweep, because that means is that if you have a complex road that follows a lot of curves and a lot of different things, you don't want to add all the outlines separately, constantly over and over again. What you wanted to do is to get the computer to modify it for you. So you can make a sweep. If I come in here and give it a category as site, okay, and I can then make a sweep. I can pick the path, and you can pick as many versions of the path. Like if there are several changes in level as you go through it, the sweep should follow those levels. So once I make it, I can accept it, and I can edit the profile by sketch, or I can create a profile family. But let's just say we want to make a pathway like this. It's giving us these error messages, don't worry about that, which we can just change to 500, for example. Or actually, no, the one we want to do is 400 thick. So 400, and we'll make it, let's say 20 mils above the ground. If I accept it, it will create, a sweep following the line of where we want it to go, but it will follow the modifications in the slope, so that the whole road will move together as a kind of contiguous thing. Does that make sense? Okay. Now what I'm saying is that the 3D elements of the site are not as important as actually getting the annotations down. So actually starting to work out how the different things are set up is more important than the 3D elements. But you can get to a point where you actually want to add it in 3D, because it means that after a while you can calculate the excavation and you can calculate the amount of material in the road that you need to add to it. Okay, I have another video about this which was on a different, completely more sloped site, which I think I'll add to the bottom of the list as well, because it actually gives you a little bit more opportunity to play with it just for your later projects. It's a little bit more in depth, because this site isn't really got that much stuff going on for roads, but it's important to set it up. Okay.